Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I don't think it hit me all at once. That's the part that still bothers me. There was no big, cinematic moment where my wife dropped a bombshell and the music swelled and my world shattered. No. It came slowly. In glances, in silences, in paperwork left conveniently out on the dining room table. It started with the posturing. Renee had always been a bit dramatic. That's not an insult. She wore it like a badge. Grand entrances, emotional exits, and this belief that she could talk her way out of, or into, anything. When we met, I found that magnetic. Now, I saw it for what it was, control. Her new favorite trick was tossing around phrases like, "You'll regret not being more careful," and "My lawyer says you're in for a rude awakening." At first, I thought it was post-divorce bitterness playing out before we even signed the papers. But then she started saying it differently, smiling when she did, as if she already knew how the story would end. One afternoon I came home early. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was unusually quiet. She was on the phone in her office, her voice low and sugary. "No, don't worry, Gerald, he's clueless. He's not even fighting back." Ma'am. Exactly. Once the judge sees the report, it's over. He'll fold. I didn't say anything. Just backed away slowly and waited outside like I just pulled in. She greeted me with a fake surprise and a kiss that didn't land. I asked how her day had been. She said, productive, and left it at that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling while she scrolled endlessly on her phone next to me, occasionally laughing at messages she didn't bother hiding. I didn't need to snoop. I knew. She was laying groundwork. And sure enough, 3 days later, the letter came. Thick envelope, expensive letterhead, and a tone so smug I could practically hear her lawyer dictating it between sips of scotch. It was a formal warning, accusing me of financial mismanagement, controlling behaviors, and attempting to create a hostile home environment. There was even a line about emotional endangerment, which felt like a lawyer's version of grabbing at smoke. She watched me read it from across the kitchen island, sipping tea like she was posing for a commercial. I folded the letter and set it down gently. "That what you've been working on?" I asked. Her lips curled slightly. "My attorney thought it best to be proactive." "Your attorney thinks this will scare me?" She shrugged, like it didn't matter either way. "He just doesn't want me taken advantage of." I nodded slowly. "Well, that makes two of us." The smugness cracked for a second, but she quickly covered it with a dismissive wave. "Don't be dramatic. We'll settle this cleanly, as long as you're cooperative." Cooperative. That word rang in my ears for days. It wasn't a request. It was a command. That week, I learned a few things, that she'd already told her parents I was dangerous, that she'd been meeting with her attorney in secret for over a month, and that she'd started shifting small amounts of money between our joint and personal accounts. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough that, over time, I'd look like the one bleeding us dry. She was planning a siege, and she thought I didn't even realize we were at war. To the world, I was the quiet one, the unambitious husband, the safe guy she married when her bad boy phase ran out of gas. And now she thought she'd pin it all on me, send her attorney to tear me apart in court while she played the victim. The part that stung? People were already buying it. Neighbors started treating me like I was made of glass. Her friends stopped saying hi when they passed me in town. Even our dog started sleeping on her side of the bed. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been watching. I wasn't just letting her talk. I was listening, recording, following. And what I found out made even my hands shake. She didn't realize how quiet I'd gone. That was her mistake. Renee thought silence meant surrender, that the absence of confrontation meant she was winning. But I wasn't staying quiet out of fear. I was calculating. I was watching her build her little empire of lies brick by brick, and I wanted to make sure I saw every step, because eventually, I planned to bring it all crashing down. She kept pushing. Her attorney, Gerald Wortham, ESQ, began sending letters weekly, each one more theatrical than the last. Demands for full custody, alimony despite her six-figure salary, a claim that she feared for her emotional safety and mental peace, whatever that meant. In one document, she even requested an emergency court order to have me removed from the marital home. Her evidence? That I walked too quietly and that it made her uneasy. I should have laughed, but I didn't. Because this wasn't just about a divorce anymore. It was a performance. She wanted me out of the house not because she felt unsafe, but because it would be easier for her lawyer to paint me as the absentee spouse. Every little thing was a move. Every word was rehearsed. And I let her think it was working. I kept going to work, kept doing the dishes, kept folding her laundry. She barely noticed. She was too busy texting Gerald and her best friend Tasha about how close they were to breaking me. Tasha, by the way, was a goldmine. She thought she was just being loyal, but she had a habit of oversharing online. A brunch photo here, a blurry dinner boomerang there, and all of it was geotagged. That's how I found out Renee had been spending long evenings at a boutique hotel downtown, booked under her maiden name, always between 7 and 11 p.m., and almost always on nights when Gerald Wortham just happened to work late. I hired someone, not a PI. I wanted someone quieter, less official, a guy named Colin who worked as a freelance surveillance tech. I told him I needed 3 things: a timeline, proof of communication, and any overlap between their public claims and private behavior. 2 weeks later, Colin delivered. Hotel check-ins, shared Uber rides, restaurant bills where Gerald's signature showed up just under hers. But the kicker? A photo grainy, zoomed in, but clear enough. Renee and Gerald walking into a hotel suite, her hand on his chest, his tie already loosened. I saved that one. But I wasn't done. I needed more than scandal. I needed leverage. The kind that didn't just win in court, but ruined reputations. That's when I made a call to a friend of mine, Tanya Martinez, an estate attorney with a ruthless streak and a photographic memory. She had worked on a case 3 years ago involving a man named Gerald Wortham and a bar complaint that was sealed but not forgotten. I thought the guy lost his license, she said when I brought him up. Or was supposed to. He got caught pushing his female client to file false abuse claims against her husband to win sole custody. It never went to trial, settled privately. But the husband had recordings. My blood went cold. It was the same playbook. Different woman. Can you get me the case file? She hesitated. Not officially. But I know who has it. And just like that, I had it all, blueprints to her entire strategy, written years ago by a man who had perfected the art of weaponizing women's fear in court to fleece men who didn't see it coming. Only this time, the man he was targeting wasn't blind. By now, Renee was emboldened. She started making smug comments even in front of mutual friends. I'm just glad I got good legal advice early on, she'd say, swirling wine. Some people wait too long and get blindsided. They'd laugh politely. I'd smile with them. She thought my quiet meant resignation. She didn't notice I had stopped sleeping in our room. Didn't notice I had created a private email chain between myself, my new legal counsel, and 2 former clients of Gerald's who were now more than happy to talk under sealed testimony. She thought she was delivering the final blow, but I had already laid the foundation for hers. And it was coming soon, closer than she realized. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Neutral territory, a beige, soul-crushing office suite just outside the courthouse. The kind of place that feels sterile on purpose, like emotions aren't allowed past the glass doors. Renee walked in 10 minutes late, wearing a blazer she only saved for power plays. The kind with sharp shoulders and an even sharper color, a deep, blood-red thing that told everyone in the room she wasn't here to compromise. Her lawyer, Gerald Wortham, trailed behind her, all slick-back hair and smug smirks. He carried a stack of folders like trophies. I didn't flinch. I barely looked at her. I was already seated, calm, sipping burnt office coffee from a paper cup like I had nowhere better to be. Across the table, they set up quickly. Gerald did most of the talking, long, puffed-up paragraphs about hostile behavior, uncooperative temperament, and unlawful financial concealment. He was reading from a script he'd written before even meeting me, with phrases he probably recycled from the last 5 husbands he'd tried to steamroll. I nodded along like I was taking it seriously. And then he slid a folder across the table. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, and a thick declaration Renee had signed, outlining all the ways I'd allegedly tried to control her. It was her entire legal story, carefully printed and stapled. Let's not waste time, Gerald said smoothly. My client is willing to be generous if we can resolve this quickly and amicably. Otherwise, he tapped the folder. Otherwise, I repeated slowly, you'll keep pretending this isn't a setup. That was the first time Gerald actually looked at me. Not with arrogance, but curiosity. I pulled a single envelope from my own file and placed it gently on the table. Before we go any further, I think it's important your office has a chance to review this, purely to confirm whether a professional boundary has been maintained. Renee's smile twitched. Gerald's fingers hovered over the envelope, but he didn't open it right away. He looked at me, then at her, then back at the envelope like it might explode. And then he opened it. Inside, timestamped photos, an Uber receipt, a duplicate of a hotel folio, and a copy of a private message exchanged on a burner app, one only Colin had been able to retrieve, thanks to Gerald's less-than-clever attempt to delete it from an untraceable backup. And finally, a sworn affidavit from Tanya Martinez, linking Gerald to a prior ethics violation, an identical case, eerily familiar. Renee's face went pale. Gerald turned the page slowly. His fingers trembled slightly. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. He didn't say a word. I leaned forward. See, the thing is, I didn't come here today to negotiate. I came to offer a courtesy. He glanced back at Renee, but she was already panicking. She reached for the papers. What is this? What is this? What did you give him, Gerald? He didn't answer. He stood up. Excuse me, he mumbled, voice dry, and left the room like someone had just unplugged him. For a few seconds, it was just us. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. You're bluffing, she whispered. You're bluffing. This doesn't mean anything. Then why did your lawyer leave his own mediation? I asked. No response. Just breathing. She reached for her phone. I watched her thumb fumble across the screen like she couldn't move fast enough. Her whole posture had changed. Gone was the woman who walked in late and smirking. Now she was shaking, dialing, pacing. I don't even know what you think you have. You want me to list it? I said softly. The photos? The video? The audio from the hotel lobby? The affidavit from your assistant? The chat logs between you and Gerald from the burner app? The disbarment petition that's already been prepped by the state bar? Her mouth opened. No sound came out. I stood up slowly and reached for my jacket. I don't need to win in court, Renee. That was never the goal. I just needed you to feel, for 5 minutes, what it's like to be absolutely powerless. She sat back down, hard. The mediator returned 10 minutes later, looking pale and confused. Is everything okay? He asked. Renee blinked, still processing. No, I said. But it's finally honest. Then I walked out, leaving the folder on the table like a gift no one wanted to unwrap. Court isn't like the movies. There's no gasping crowd or gavel slamming on oak while someone shouts objection. It's quiet. Dull. The kind of quiet that lets you hear a person's world unraveling. Especially when that person is sitting 2 rows ahead of you in designer heels, gripping the armrest like it's going to save her from drowning. Renee didn't speak to me before the hearing. She didn't even look my way. She sat beside a new attorney, some junior partner from Gerald's firm who clearly hadn't been briefed on why he was suddenly handed a flaming pile of a case. The guy didn't know yet that the building was already on fire. I did. And so did Gerald, wherever he was hiding. Probably in a meeting with the state bar, explaining why he had to resign for personal reasons. The courtroom was small, barely 10 rows deep. Family court always feels more intimate than it should, like someone cracked open your home and invited the public in to watch the collapse. I didn't bring anyone. No friends. No moral support. Just my counsel and a folder that had already done most of the talking. Her parents were there, though. Her mother sat stiff and alert like she still thought this could be salvaged. Her father looked disappointed. Not in me. In her. That surprised me. The man had never liked me. But I guess watching your daughter get dressed down by a judge changes how you see things. Case 21473, the clerk called. Renee Holloway versus Michael Holloway. We stood. Swore in. Took our seats. Her lawyer started first. She tried to pick up the original narrative accusations, vague emotional trauma, and the need for full financial control. It was like watching someone recite a play after the curtain had already fallen. And then my lawyer stood up. Calm. Patient. Surgical. She didn't yell. Didn't dramatize. She started by dismantling Renee's original claims, disproving the financial abuse with bank records showing Renee's own withdrawals, cross-checking dates against hotel bookings. Then came the character witnesses. 2 former clients of Gerald's, willing to testify to a familiar pattern. One of them cried on the stand, not out of grief, but fury. Said she lost custody of her son for 2 years based on Gerald's advice. But the silence in the courtroom reached a new level when my lawyer introduced the final piece of evidence. A signed affidavit from Gerald Wortham himself. She dropped it on the table like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The judge raised an eyebrow. Defense, do you wish to enter this into the record? Yes, Your Honor. We believe this directly contradicts prior sworn statements made by the plaintiff and supports a pattern of coordinated misrepresentation. That's how professionals say they lied, and we can prove it. The judge nodded and scanned the affidavit for about 10 seconds before turning to Renee. "Ms. Holloway," he said, voice dry, "do you have anything to say in response to these materials?" She blinked like she'd just woken up in someone else's nightmare. Your Honor. I wasn't aware. My previous counsel, he never. Would you like a recess to confer with your current representation? Her lawyer leaned in, whispered frantically. She just stared forward, like she couldn't feel her legs anymore. I watched her mother sink in her chair, watched her father shake his head and rest his face in his hand. It wasn't pity I saw in their eyes. It was shame. The judge granted the recess. Outside, I stood in the hallway with my hands in my pockets while she paced 10 feet away, panicking into her phone. The confident, manipulative woman I married had disappeared. What stood there now was someone unraveling, yanking at strings that no longer held anything up. She caught my eye. "Why?" she asked, voice raw. "Why did you do this?" I tilted my head slightly. "You mean defend myself?" "No," she hissed, stepping closer. "Why'd you humiliate me?" "You started that," I said. "I just ended it." She stared at me like she didn't know who I was. And in that moment, I realized she never really did. Because the man she thought she could push, accuse, threaten, and manipulate into silence, the safe husband, was long gone. The man standing in front of her now was someone who had studied her every lie, dismantled her every narrative, and waited until the truth was so undeniable it didn't even need to be shouted. It just needed to be shown. And I wasn't done yet. It didn't take long for the dust to settle. The judge ruled in my favor across the board, asset division, custody, even attorney's fees. Turns out, when your opponent builds their case on a lie and gets caught colluding with their own lawyer, the court isn't too generous. The disbarment petition moved forward faster than I expected. Gerald Wortham was under formal investigation by the state bar within a week. I never heard whether he cut a deal or tried to go down swinging. Didn't really matter to me. He was finished either way. Renee's new lawyer filed a motion to vacate the original complaint and begged the judge to let her rewrite the narrative under new, corrected representation. It was denied. Publicly. The ruling itself wasn't the satisfying part. It was the silence that followed. She stopped showing up to the gym we both used to go to. Stopped posting pictures of brunch with her girlfriends. Her side of the family, especially her father, went radio silent. People who used to smile at her in the produce aisle now looked away. Not because I made a scene. Because she did. And I let her. I moved out of the house 2 weeks after the final court date. Not because I had to legally, it was mine, but because I didn't want to breathe in the same space she used to practice her lies. I found a small place outside town, quieter, with enough space for my son to have his own room when he visited. We built a routine fast. We cooked frozen pizza on Fridays, played video games, watched action movies he wasn't really old enough for. He laughed more here than I'd heard in years. I used to wonder if I'd lose everything in the divorce. Turns out I only lost what never cared about me to begin with. The last time I saw her in person was at the drop-off. She looked smaller somehow, like her confidence had physically shrunk. The red blazer was gone. Now it was oversized sunglasses and a hoodie. She didn't speak much. Just handed off the backpack and nodded. As I turned to go, she finally said something. "You made me look like a monster." I paused. "No," I said without turning around. "You did that all by yourself. I just let people see it." She didn't respond. Just stood there, holding a coffee she wasn't drinking. I didn't hate her. I didn't need to. That's the part no one tells you about revenge. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just the quiet relief of no longer being afraid. Of no longer shrinking yourself to make someone else feel powerful. I didn't expose her because I wanted to destroy her. I did it because I finally understood I didn't have to protect someone who was trying to bury me. And now? Now I sleep. Now I laugh with my son. Take long walks alone. Pick up hobbies I once forgot I loved. I still get texts from people I never expected to hear from. Apologies, congratulations, questions. But I don't respond to most of them. Because I didn't do it for a standing ovation. I did it for peace. And I have it now. Funny thing is, I think Gerald saw it first. When his hand started to shake.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.